Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, James.
And good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. So, Sunday morning, Anne.
Once again.
If you haven't listened before, thank you for listening. Anne and I are going to have another conversation for the next half an hour or so. We do not know specifically what we will discuss. We will genuinely just see where it goes. And we do mean it. We hope sincerely that you enjoy listening and that you find it interesting and of value.
Yes.
Absolutely. Are you happy to begin, Anne?
I am, yes.
Brilliant. Where would you like to start this morning?
I'd like to start that I've had a client this week, a gentleman who's in his 80s.
Yes.
And it was interesting because we were talking about travel, because this man was in the Navy. We're talking about travel to different countries.
So he came to see you for
treatment for reflexology.
Reflexology treatment,
yes.
And you got talking about his travels in the navies.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. The British Navy.
The British Navy, yes.
Okay.
Yes, which was very, very interesting.
Yes.
And of course, he asked me, which countries I'd been, and I have done a lot of travelling in my time.
Yes, you have.
Only in later years, quite later years, I managed to get all the travelling in.
Okay.
So we were talking about different countries and the countries he'd been.
Yes.
And then I was saying that the first exciting place for me to go to abroad was America.
Wow, okay.
Because I never thought I would go to anywhere like America.
So when did you first go to America?
In the 80s.
In the 1980s?
Yes, so it's the 80s.
Wow.
And it was all done within a couple of months because friends of ours,
yes,
2 friends of ours, she started working for a timeshare company which were just coming into, they were just starting doing them. And they offered her this timeshare on Orange Lake Country Park in Florida.
Wow.
So we hired a car and we were really excited. So that was my first experience of another country, really. So off we went to America.
Okay.
So in the airport itself, we met another couple who we were talking to.
Okay.
And then went our own ways.
Yes.
They went to stay in a hotel. We went to stay in a house. And we were travelling around. They were just staying in the hotel and doing all the Disney things. On the way back, we sat with them again in the airport and obviously asked, have you had a good time?
Yes.
And the lady was telling us a tale that the waiter had asked them as they were leaving, have you enjoyed it? And she said, yes, everything is bigger and better than in England.
Everything in America, as far as this lady was concerned,
yes,
is bigger and better in America.
Yes.
Okay. And what did the waiter say?
Well, everything may be bigger and better, but we will never have your class.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So we may wonder what that means. But it made me understand is the class he's talking about wasn't class in status.
Yes.
It was in how we eat,
yes,
morals, things like that. How do we, how we're polite.
Yes.
I think that's what he was talking about more than anything.
Class in relationship to values.
Yes.
Morality, values.
Standards,
yes.
Standards, yes. So how do we set a table?
Okay.
So as with this gentleman, we probably would be about 3 when our parents would say, now you have to set the table for the meals.
Is this what your parents did with you?
That's what all parents did.
All parents did?
All parents did.
Wow. So you were setting a table from
yes,
as the earliest possible
yes,
opportunity?
Because everybody sat at a table.
That is true. It's interesting, isn't it?
Nobody didn't sit at a table.
That's changed, hasn't it? Even I remember much more frequently when I was younger that meal times weren't always at a table, but they were more at a table than it seems most families are now. And I do feel that that's a huge change in meal times being around a table.
Yes.
Yes.
So you had to learn where you put the knife and fork.
Yes.
Now, if I go into anywhere, into a cafe or anything, I still get annoyed at a knife and fork and a spoon being wrapped up in a serviette.
Right, okay.
That's not setting a table. Right. So if you think about it, even with that little thing,
yes,
is when you were even remember when you were young, if you went into even Joe's cafe or somewhere, the tables used to always be set.
Yes.
As soon as somebody left a table, a waitress would come along and set that table ready for them coming. Now you go into a cafe, and this pot's on, you move your own pots.
Yes.
So for me, it's those sort of standards that we seem to have lost. So if we lose those basic standards, does that encroach on the rest of life? On, politeness, morals?
It's a really interesting point. If I've understood the wider point that you're making, does the change in micro-behaviours, please and thank you, setting a table, and I would suggest maybe holding a door open for somebody, general morality as far as politeness, particularly within British culture, has been and hopefully still is, does that then feed into our psyche and inform our level of honesty and truth and integrity? And if we allow the fraying and the erosion of micro-behaviours, does that then lead to a rot in our wider societal behaviour and our attitudes to larger aspects of our life? Is that right? Have I understood that properly?
I think it already has. Never mind lead to. I think it's already happened. Because
So I suppose you were posing the question, rhetorically, really, as in for effect.
Yes.
It has happened.
Yeah, it has happened. Yeah.
To be honest, I agree. I do agree. We're feigning with a false sense of hope in a way that things are not quite as eroded as they are. And I am sure you listening this morning, nobody's perfect, but we are all, to the best of our abilities, I'm sure, still polite and considerate towards each other and treat each other with respect. But we all recognise that society and globally, there is a lack of morality. It seems to be regressing. No, it is regressing.
Yes.
It's sliding back.
And the start of the really start of that conversation is, where do those standards start? And I know that those standards start when you sit round that table as a very young child, and you don't know how much you're absorbing from your parents' conversations, from having a laugh around the table, somebody else coming home from school and being upset.
That's such a good point, Anne. It's so powerful, the table, because whether you are in a stately home, or let's expand it, a palace, or a terraced house, or even a canal boat, some form of a table will be within your living quarters, within your space, whether you are a kitchen table or a dining room table. And it's such a great leveller, because whatever it is that is surrounding you, and the environment and the opulence or not, is secondary to the actual interplay of the dynamic of humans coming together to sit together, to partake in the sharing of food and the sharing of each other's time and presence. And often, you are right, family, friends, so people that are crossing generations, crossing genders, crossing work experiences, life experiences, are coming together for a period of time that was where people discussed, where people listened, where people argued, where people laughed, where life took place. And you are also right, absolutely, I feel, it was where children were educated in, and a lot of it, you are right, I feel, subliminally and subconsciously, by example, by osmosis, really, by being around strong people, and I mean strong in a positive, life-affirming context, by being around modes of being, modelling of behaviour that is positive. It taught an attitude to life of respect to self and other, of generational respect, of respecting your parents,
Yeah.
your grandparents, your elders, your teachers, respecting each other's points of view, how to lively and fervently and passionately debate and discuss and agree and disagree, but at the end of the discourse still shake hands or give each other a hug, making sure that you understood how to eat with a level of respect, with a respect for each other. This is romanticising it, and I'm sure everybody listening has some rather, I'm trying to think of the correct word really, rather not negative, but memories of meal times not being that pleasant as well. So this is romanticising it and making it idealistic. But I do feel there is truth in what you've brought up and what we are discussing, that the table and meal times being around a table and people who are dwelling within the house, family and sometimes friends,
having to come together,
coming together to sit together, to share time, space and each other's company. It is a theatre of life, really.
Yes.
Okay.
Meal times, I can say meal times when my children were little, sometimes were absolute nightmares. Absolute nightmares.
So when I was small as well, yes, absolutely.
Because my husband was so particular about table manners. And I mean really particular. And by the time our children were 3, you could take them anywhere and they would sit and eat a meal with a knife and fork. But all the time he would be saying, hold your knife and fork properly.
Yes.
Put your elbows down.
Yes.
Sit up straight. And I used to think, oh, what shift is he on next week? And we can just eat in peace.
Yes.
But by him being like that, it made my children's manners were impeccable.
Yes.
When you took them anywhere. And I think, and they keep that. Another thing is, myself, and obviously you carry that through to your own children. I don't think my grandchildren have carried it through to theirs. But you would always say, please may I leave the table. No child ever got down from the table without saying, please may I leave the table. But neither did an adult ever leave a table without saying, would you excuse me, please?
Yes.
Nobody would ever just get up.
Yes.
And go. That I think is what the waiter meant as class.
Yes. I understand what you mean.
It's
not referring to a social status of importance, real or not. It's referring to the way we are with ourselves and with each other.
Yes. And it's important, isn't it?
And whether we are eating bread and jam or a banquet meal, we can still bring a level of class in that contact. Manners, yes.
Manners. Old-fashioned manners.
Yes. And a consideration for anyone else that we are with.
Yes.
And it can be taken too far, where it becomes so much wrapped up in pomp and circumstance and ceremony that it starts to be ridiculous, to be honest with you. But in its essence, when it's about intrinsic values that manifest through the way we conduct ourselves and words we say and rituals, in a sense, it does tie to a goodness, a morality, I would say. And you are right, that morality then will inform how we view wider contexts like health and education, food, travel, the environment, money, and everything else in life, family, marriage. Not looking for an objective, specific answer, in fact, but an attitude towards them that then flows that respect, that consideration, that decency and decorum, that goodness into all areas. And there's going to be naturally, as I'm sure there is with you all listening this morning, a myriad of opinions if we were to open up all of those topics and many other topics as well. Views are going to be held. People are going to have different life experiences. You will have valid life experiences and somebody else will have valid life experiences that at times will contradict each other, that you will have, if you were in the presence of each other, a lively debate, a discussion, and you may disagree, but the way that disagreement takes place can be done respectfully, passionately, honestly, openly, fervently, but respectfully, where human decency, dignity, and and a humanity is still upheld.
Yeah.
And I do feel you are right, Anne, if this is what you are saying, if it is what we are discussing, that it was the cornerstone of what British values, British life could be, and at one time was moving towards.
And should be.
Should be, okay.
You know, the simple thing of...
Be bold, Anne.
Yeah, no, it should be.
Be bold.
There's some things that are so basic and so simple that we've lost. It's like somebody sneezing.
Yes.
And this is will sound so minor and so silly to even say to a lot of people. But if you're at the table and you sneeze, you excuse yourself and you say, I'm sorry, I didn't, that just came. Nowadays, people don't bother with that. You sneeze, you are in the middle of a conversation. I can remember my daughter.
You meaning that people blow their noses whilst you're eating?
While you're eating, yeah.
Slobber and gunk is hocking up and putting everybody off their food and spoiling the meal, or your company or whatever it might be.
Exactly. But my youngest daughter I can't tell you what her stomach's like. She was sick at the sound of anything, but she hates any gunge. She always hated anything that looked like gunge from being very, very tiny.
Yes.
And when she started school, I was walking her to school. As we were getting her ready, I was getting her ready for school. My other daughter sneezed. You know what children are like. They can do these sneezes where their face is covered in it. Only children can have those snotty sneezes.
Yeah, and then with their hand and their wrist up their arm, they smear it all.
Yeah, all up the school jumper.
Yeah.
And that's what she did.
Sorry for that, everybody.
And I expected Jill to react.
Yes.
And she didn't react at all. And we had a long walk to school, because obviously you walked in those days.
Yes.
And we walked to school and she was fine. And I was surprised. And as we got to the school gates, literally at the school gates, she suddenly said, Julie's nose.
Yes.
And she was sick all over the pavement. Literally vomited all over the pavement. And one of the ladies said,
right, okay.
How dare you bring your child to school when she's that poorly? And I said, she's not poorly, she's stupid.
Right, okay.
But, that's life, isn't it? These things happen.
Yes.
But nowadays we've lost humour as well, because sometimes in standards that we have, we can bring humour into it.
Absolutely, yes. Otherwise it becomes a bit earnest, doesn't it? And it can be, and I hope that it isn't coming across like that in terms of a little bit aloof, and then it does feed into things like status and self-importance. And I do know from previous conversations with you and our conversation this morning that isn't the point that you were making this morning, and it certainly isn't how I feel about it. I do feel no matter who you are, where you are, self-respect, self-decency, self-awareness is a reality, and that morality in terms of how we behave is tangible, and we are aware of it, and we do feel it. We feel it every day when somebody's rude. We're aware of when somebody's rude, and we make allowances for it, and people will make excuses for it, either for themselves, their children, their loved ones. We are aware of it. We feel it. And if it wasn't tangibly real, in as so much as if it had no basis in reality, why do we feel it? We know that it's rude.
Yes.
We know that it is rude. Children, even who haven't been shown it, have a tendency still to play with each other. And when naturally in occurrence, they find a way of being respectful towards each other. They still fight. They still will argue over toys. They will still fall out and cry and then make up again. But that's because they have a sense of decency. They have a sense of fairness, staunchly so. Yeah. They know when something's not fair. If somebody's playing with a toy that doesn't belong to them, or if somebody's taken a sweet that somebody said that somebody else was supposed to have, or somebody takes too much. Children intuitively know. We all know that. We know it ourselves. So this is not, as far as I'm concerned, and I know you agree, or please correct me if it isn't the case, and I'm sure it is for all of you listening, this is nothing to do with self-importance. This is nothing to do with a class system linked to social status, title, monetary status, job status, or anything of the sort. That's a totally separate issue. This is to do with how we behave on an individual level with ourselves when we are in the presence of nobody else physically, and when we are sharing our presence with others, people we know and people we don't know. How are we behaving in life?
And that's what I'm saying is, for me, it starts at that table at a very young age. Literally at that table where you're first taught manners and to consider other people around that table.
So you feel, to really clarify the point, that the move away from meal times being around the table
as a family
and friends has been a leading factor, a leading contributor towards the disintegration of morality and manners and decency and standards in life. And the youth of today are at a loss, not solely, as in singularly, because of not eating around a table, but because that has been taken away. Life is not that way anymore.
And
is that fair to say? Have I encapsulated that?
You have, yes. It's more
accurately
than fair to say, because what I see in this day and age is teenagers taking food upstairs.
Yes.
Food was never allowed upstairs years
No.
ago. You were never allowed to take any food upstairs.
No.
And they take it up and they still play on the games or whatever they're doing. Now, my daughter, when she was first started work, bought herself a television. So she was just 16.
Okay.
And she bought herself a very tiny screen. And you can imagine what the televisions were like then.
Yes.
And like the teenagers today, or the children today, you can say children, not even teenagers.
Yes.
They're all on games and computers upstairs most of the time.
Yes.
That's always been so. Children, the young teenagers will escape. But what my husband used to do, he used to go up and say, "You're spending too much time up here," and cut the plug off the TV.
Cut the plug. Cut the wire with the plug.
Cut the wire.
Wow.
Off. So the plug was off.
Right. Okay.
So she couldn't watch it.
Okay.
So Julie taught herself how to wire a plug.
Wow.
We didn't. So she'd wire the plug.
Yes.
And then the next time, he'd go up, cut the plug off. Till eventually the television was on the floor.
Yes.
With about 2 feet of wire.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's an impressive life skill.
Yeah. But
to be able to wire a plug, as well as
But the competition between the two was
the
mad.
determination,
and her
stubbornness.
determination, yes. But he was making his point and he was saying you can't use it. She was making her point. I paid for it, you didn't.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there will always be those sorts of conflicts
Absolutely.
within families.
Absolutely.
But
Life is not
no.
easy, is it, for anybody? No matter what.
None of us.
No matter how considerate we are of other people, life's challenging daily, and all the niceties and all the respect in the world can't take away the ups and downs of life.
No.
So we do need to have a sense of humour, like you said, and we also need to have the recognition that challenge and conflict in various forms is going to arise, and it is also what makes life interesting and gives it some spice and electricity.
Yes.
Otherwise it will become
very boring.
It will become bland and predictable. So the change in dynamics in relationships are important.
Yes.
But the extremities that are happening, I feel, are too extreme, and it's gone beyond concerning now. It's
standards.
It is standards.
Standards. It's as simple as saying standards. And it's standards in every aspect of life that we should look at.
Yes.
Whether it's your work or not your work.
Yes.
Yes.
It's having discipline, a level of discipline, so that we are able to hold ourselves accountable. And I don't mean this in terms of punishment or reward, but if we make a commitment, we are able to know whether or not we are able to fulfill that commitment, at least in intention, so that we, to the best of our knowledge, are saying what we mean and we mean what we say. So if we intend to do something, we do it.
Yes.
And we commit to it. And if we do commit to it, unless something outside of what we could perceive, which does happen, we will do what we say. And if not, we will say no.
Yes.
So our word, and when I say our, I'm including everybody listening, all of you, so I hope that is okay, that we are integral, that we can take each other at our word. And if we can't take each other at our word anymore, we're not going to be able to have trust, because everything is centered around the word.
Yes.
And if we are able to trust in our pledges, our promises, our covenants and commitments, then we are going to find a way of bringing back those standards, bringing back that morality, and unlocking and unleashing that inherent goodness that's inside of everybody, that's inside of you,
Yes.
and that's inside of those wonderful, magical, divine children.
Yes.
They need it to come out, and it's within them, it's within all of us. So we can bring it back, and we can all bring it back today. We can all choose, even if it's just a little bit, to bring it into our lives this Sunday.
And the other thing to bring back
Yes.
is the shake of the hand.
Okay.
Not punching each other's hand.
Yes.
Literally, shake hands.
Yes. It's
Because
become
that-
very nonchalant,
Yeah,
hasn't it?
Because that shake of the hand was a vow. An absolute vow. When we bought our first house, my husband and I, that's how the deal was sealed.
Yes, on the shake of a hand.
By two men.
Yes.
Not the women involved, because I
Well,
couldn't be on a mortgage.
yes,
and
that's another conversation for another day.
But the gentleman in the house said to my husband, "Are you interested? Do you want to go round the house?" We'd gone round. I'd been round in the day. "Do you want to go round the house?"
Yes.
And my husband said, "There's not much point in going round the house. If she likes it, she'll have it."
Okay.
So he said. So the other man said, "Okay." Held the hands out, shook hands. That was it. The house was ours.
Wow.
No, no bartering, nothing. It was on that shake of the hand.
I know.
Where's that gone now? And now people are, gazumping.
Yes.
It's awful what's happening within house sales, and that's another thing. Stand is an honour.
Absolutely. It's dishonourable.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, at times it's corrupt.
Yes.
It's deeply corrupt, and that corruption is in all walks of life. And I'm sure you all listening are aware of it in various
Yes.
ways. So I do feel that this is a very important topic, and it's
Yes.
very simple, really, because you are right to highlight meal times and a table.
Yes.
And everybody sitting around the table, and the etiquette of how to eat and how to conduct yourself.
And converse.
Absolutely, and have meaningful conversations and learn the art of conversations and the art of listening, and to be able to feel each other.
Yes.
It's so important. We can bring it back.
Yes.
And I do feel that hope is not lost, and faith most definitely is not broken. And there are good people
Yes.
across our land and across this world who do feel and do recognise that things need to be changed, and that we need to awaken and remember the very goodness, the very nature of who we are together, if for nothing else, for these children who are so deeply lost. And it's beyond concerning, it's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
But there is hope, and all of you listening, and there are other people listening as well through the weeks who are good, not perfect, not without mistakes, not without challenges. That's life. But essentially in nature and intention are good, and are turning towards that goodness. So let us draw strength and hope from that, and let us recognise that life can come around, and that these values are not gone. They are not gone, and we are going to grow them together, and we can grow them together.
Yes. And I'd like to just say, Laurie, I will answer your question next week when we start the session. So I haven't forgotten you, and I will. But if anybody else has any questions regarding today or any others, please send them to us, and we can answer those as well.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. We have had a number of questions sent in, and Anne is absolutely right. Thank you so much. We are going to collate them together, and then we'll be able to do a question and answer podcast and go through them as best we can together. So thank you. And if you have any more questions, as Anna's just said, please send them in.
Okay.
I think we best leave it there, Anne.
Right. Bye, everybody.
Have a lovely rest of the weekend or week, whenever it is that you are listening. And we look forward to being with you, to speaking with you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.